How do you summon and defeat the Megapithecus boss in Ark? Where do you obtain the artifacts? And what are the best creatures to use in the fight? Well, let's break it down and have a look. And before we start, if you're interested in searching at a specific part of the boss fight or an artifact, make sure you check out the chapters below. So first up, let's talk about preparation for the caves. Much like the Broodmother, the level of the creatures in the first two caves are about the same as the outside world, so you can bring in a fairly standard set of equipment. Something like a shotgun, a crossbow with some grappling hooks, as well as a pike and med brews to heal through the damage, as well as the mega rabies that the Onyx can give you. For armour, it's good to bring a good suit of flak, however keep in mind that some of the caves have r.volumetriccloud and they can destroy your armour. So you'll need to either bring a backup set of armour, or rather than that you'll bring some leather or some hide so that you can actually repair it on the go other than requiring a smithy. Now, if you're like me and you have high level creatures, you may actually want to bring a dinosaur along with you in the caves, and for this my personal preference is the Baryonyx. It's a little bit smaller and skinnier than the other dinosaurs, so it can actually fit through most caves, as well as the fact that it is able to jump, as while some of the other creatures you may want to use are the direwolf, the saber-tooth, or even the Gigantopithecus. And for the last cave that we will visit, being an underwater cave, you will need to prepare yourself a set of scuba with at least 1 or 2 backup air tanks, as well as an underwater creature for clearing things. For this my preference is the Basilosaurus, as it will protect you from the stun caused by the Cnidaria, which is the jellyfish, as well as the movement penalty from the Electrophorus, which is the eel, and it also has a very high initial health pool, which lets you focus on a pure melee build with your creatures, as well as an insulation buff while riding to help you with the cold underwater environments. A well-bred Basilosaurus will quite comfortably take down the solo alpha creatures of the deep. The first cave we're going to look at is the Northeast Cave, located on Kano Island at around 1585. You will take a short walk into the cave before coming across an even shorter underwater passage, which leads to a deep cave with a spiral path all the way to the bottom. You'll most likely encounter Onyx, Ariano and the Pulmonoscorpus, while you will rarely find the Megalania, dung beetle and the Megalosaurus. There are 3 explorer notes, 2 right at the very bottom and 1 on a hidden ledge, as well as blue and red drops in this cave, which make it a very good source of loot, as it's pretty quick to traverse. The next cave we are going to look at is the Upper South Cave, located in a distinctive looking canyon at 6856. It includes all the creatures of the previous cave, as well as the r.volumetriccloud and the Titanoboa. This cave also has an underwater environment at the bottom, and so you will have piranha and sarcos to contend with. At the start of the cave, I would recommend following the glowing green plants as much as possible. There are a few twists and turns, but eventually this will lead you to the next area of the cave. This is where you will need to make a decision, as the path is blocked here by a tree. You can kind of jump past it, but there's also a secondary blocking point just past this where you cannot go further with any kind of a team. You will need to choose to either leave your mounts behind and continue on foot, or you can drop down off the cliff with your team and rely on cryopods to get your creature back out. So just a note with that, the changes to the cryopods as of recording this have no restrictions on actually putting your creature into cryopods, but however to be able to deploy them again you need a cryo fridge nearby, and this allows you to actually bypass these blockages by dropping down. However, on your way back, when you come back this way, you will need to put your creatures into the cryopod and then continue the rest of the way exiting on foot. Once you reach the small ruins at the base of the cave, head down to the left and clear out the sarcos. Off in the distance past the water there is an outline of a rock near a bush, and just at the top of this there is a shortcut to the artifact. Normally you would need to travel underwater passages swarming with piranhas and sarcos to get to the artifact. However, by using a grappling hook you can bypass this danger altogether. The cave has 3 explorer notes and does contain blue supply crates, but with the Northeast Cave being so much more readily available, the loot here pales in comparison. The last cave, the underwater Caverns of Lost Faith, are located off the coast at 5310, and you are looking for the glowing plants that are growing just outside the entrance. If you use the available commands to disable the clouds and fog, the underwater environment becomes very clear to view, and I'll leave those commands down in the description of the video. I recommend that you do not rush this cave, as there are various types of creatures that can be hidden in the ground or the rocks. You'll find large groups of Megalodon, Electrophorus and Mantis ready to swarm you, so it's always a good idea to wait for them to come to you and see how many you're dealing with. The other creatures that can complicate things are the Cnidaria, which are the jellyfish that stun lock you unless you are riding a Basilosaurus. The other is the Ammonite, which, while weak itself, causes a rage debuff to the player, causing every creature in the local area to come and get you, including the non-hostile creatures such as the saber-tooth salmon, which all of a sudden want to attack you. Keep in mind that all the creatures that spawn in this cavern are twice the level of the outside world. So in my case, with a max level of 180, the creatures in this cave are actually 360, and you will be fighting swarms of them. The cave is very linear. It has some side caverns that you can explore, but they will lead nowhere. And once you've travelled to the last section, you'll need to make sure that everything is cleared in the overgrown rocky areas before grabbing the artifact to prevent yourself from being swarmed. But other than that, I recommend popping your head above the water in the last cavern, as you can check on the walkways to check for loot drops, as the cave spawns blue, yellow and red loot crates, which are actually a slightly better loot table, as they are actually in a far more difficult cave for you to deal with. Now that we have all the artifacts, we can discuss the boss fight. To be able to summon the Megapithecus, you will need to be at least level 45 to summon the Gamma, 65 for the Beta, and 85 for the Alpha. And on top of that, you will need the trophy items from the Megalania, Megalodon, Spino, Therizino, and the Thylacoleo, 5 of each for the Beta fight, and 10 of each for the Alpha fight. With your summoning items secured, you will need to take them to an obelisk. Specifically the blue one if you're on single player, while if you're on a server you can visit any obelisk or overland supply drop to summon yourself to the boss arena. The Megapithecus highly resembles an incredibly oversized modern day gorilla, dark silver skin and very long and thick white fur. He has 3 main features to his fight, while the environment provides the other. The Megapithecus will slam his fist into the ground, knocking everyone back, and throwing a large rock dealing large damage and knocking everyone in its path backwards, and lastly summoning the Gigantopithecus and Mesopithecus at periodic intervals. The environment, however, has a very large hole on the way to the main arena, and any creature that falls down it will die instantly. For the choice of creature for this fight is really up to you. However, it is quite common to see people use Rex or Therizino armies for this one. In my case, I am using the Therizino army as I find it the most versatile team to use for the boss fights. I also would recommend it as the best creature for the dragon fight. This is mainly due to the sweet veggie cake acting as a healing item for herbivores when they eat it, keeping your army alive longer while you're in the fight. This also allows me to actually breed a single army which I can use for every single boss arena, only having to focus on breeding a single type of creature for the end game. For the Gamma fight, I would recommend a good saddle with a dozen creatures, while the Beta and the Alpha you want the full complement with Ascendant saddles with around 15,000 health and 700 melee as a minimum. For the Alpha, you also want to include buffing creatures like the Uranus, which give you a 20% damage reduction and a 25% damage boost for your teams. When I beat the Alpha creatures myself, I had around 17,000 health and 1,000 melee with Ascendant saddles, and they took less than a quarter of their health in damage, and I only lost one team because it actually fell into the pit. Well, that brings us to the end of this, and hopefully this is enough information for anyone to take down the Gamma fight at the very least, and where to find the artifacts to summon the boss. Make sure you leave a comment if you have any tips for fighting the Megapithecus, otherwise leave me a like and I will catch you in the next one.